few weeks ago, I was lucky enough to attend an event where the new Syrian president, Ahmed al-Shara, addressed a crowd for the first time ever in the United States in the heart of New York City. That's me. He made the trip to participate in the UN General Assembly, the first time a Syrian president has done so in over 6 decades.
إن الحكاية السورية حكاية تهيج فيها المشاعر ويختلط فيها الألم بالأمل.
His visit was historic in nature, and he was hosted at events alongside the UN, with many singing his praises.
And your many fans, and I am one of them, we do have worries.
However, given his previous affiliation with the al-Nusra Front in Syria, some have been quick to criticize him and his visit to the UN, along with his recent meeting with President Trump at the White House.
This man, who just got sanctions relief, and we're setting up some military situation in Syria with him, and we're doing all these deals, and, we're besties with him now, a year ago was a designated terrorist with a $10 million bounty on his head.
I spoke with Dr. Noor Al Aswad regarding the topic. She is a professor at the University of Alabama and is on the advisory board of the Syrian American Council, and was also in attendance at the event in New York City. There's a lot of critics, I think, in Western media especially. It's not, unanimous, it's not clear across the board, but there is a lot of criticism being thrown at the new Syrian government given their past. And so people bring, the al-Nusra Front connection previously, which was something that was disavowed, I believe, in 2015 or 2017 by the people currently in power. So just first, what is your opinion on the new government, and what is your response to that criticism as somebody that's been following the issues so closely for so long?
So I have a lot of things to kind of say here. And first of all, I'm not a spokesperson for the government. I have my fair share of critique of the government, so I'm not here to kind of just be like gung-ho pro-government. But I'm going to talk really about the nuances of both when we see something that's applaudable, something that is positive, that we need to reaffirm that. And also the right to critique is definitely critical in this stage that we're at. And so there's different approaches to how we want to kind of see through this kind of post-conflict stage. But in particular, I think a lot of the way that Western pundits kind of understand Syria, and this is not new to this phase that we're in, but this has been ongoing, is kind of within this kind of Orientalist, kind of Islamophobic lens, where kind of any form of political Islam is automatically seen as extremist, as jihadist, and they're unable to see the nuances that exist, and that we can't kind of paint them all with a broad brush. And of course, the history of the current government doesn't help. But they have renounced terrorism, and this is not just something that is recent, but this has been a gradual transformation that goes back all the way from 2013, when President al-Shara renounced ISIS, and in 2016, when he distanced himself from Al-Qaeda. And in fact, he actually, has been very active in working against these groups. And he's lost many men and many allies in the battles that have ensued. And so there's been a genuine, in my view, ideological, slow and gradual transformation.
Recently, there was an event in New York City alongside the UN General Assembly, where it's the Syrian president's first time being in the United States in over 6 decades, participating in the United Nations. Obviously, it's a new president and a new government after the dictatorship has fallen. And so it was a very significant event, an historic event. So first, I just want to know what your reaction was into the words in this, and what President Ahmed al-Shara said during that event.
So it definitely was a historic event. I don't think Syrians are used to being invited and having access to those in power. And also to not have this be an event that to me didn't have a sense of this being surveilled or that it was securitized. It really was in many ways, I think, even for the Syrian American diaspora, it was a celebration. People forget that not everybody has had the chance to celebrate, because many of these diaspora really haven't had that chance to live in this moment, this historic moment that we're living in, and the symbolism of having a Syrian president on the world stage, being welcomed diplomatically, And so I think it wasn't even about the president himself, but it was about this moment and being with Syrian Americans of all different backgrounds. And so it was fascinating to me because we had a pretty good showing of Syrian Jews, Syrian Christians. There were some Jews in attendance. And I know some people who have been critical of the government and objectors who were also invited, who were also there. And so in many ways, it was a moment of celebration. That was very interesting. And I think it was also symbolic that the first event during that week of UNGA was with the Syrian American diaspora. I think there's a lot of reflection by the new government about the need not only for external legitimacy, but also internal legitimacy, and realizing that the diaspora is a very important part of that. Over half of Syria has been displaced. And so we have a lot of talent, a lot of people who are invested in the future. And I think they realize the importance of having that investment, including us in the narrative, including us in the conversation. And I really sensed that there was a Q&A session towards the end. And there were some people who were applauding, and there were some people who had difficult questions. There was a question about the participation of women in society. There were questions about, are we going to fear you like we feared the old government? I mean, even the fact that we are asking these questions without fear, to me, symbolizes a lot of the shift that we are in today. We're not in a perfect stage. We're not at the end goal of democracy, which we're all working towards. But I think there's something to be said that we are no longer having to refrain ourselves. We're no longer terrified of those in power. At least I think there's a real sense that there was a lot of support, I think, kind of genuine grassroots support.
If you had one message to the entire world on behalf of Syria, not that you speak for all Syrians or that you speak for it in general, but if you had one message to the world, I guess, on the issue of Syria, what would your message be to the world?
So, I have a book that just came out called Searching for Solidarity, Revolutionary Dreams and Radical Social Movements. And the whole book really is about how we can create solidarity and how revolutionaries on the ground have what we call affect, so ways of knowing and being that actually have the power to impact others. And it could be through their testimony, it could be through their memory, through their hope, kind of very embodied ways of hope that isn't just something theoretical, but actually has a tangible essence to it. And so all the different ways in which we can understand Syrians and how we've failed, not only Syrians, but this is, to me, the Syrian Revolution connects with so many struggles around the world, with Palestinian lives, with Black Lives Matter, with indigenous struggles. These struggles in many ways are more similar than we may think. And so the failures of solidarity here are really instructive if we kind of really want to look and see why we failed when you have over 1 million dead. And these are deaths that were documented, one of the most documented revolutions in history. You can open the Caesar sections, the Caesar photographs, and see the pictures of the dead bodies that were taken. And yet, nobody really stepped up to help Syrians. We were unable to return the international community was unable to return a single refugee, was unable to get a single Syrian out of prison. And many of these obviously are innocents who were taken in for their political views or even for no reason at all, right? And so Syrians were actually able to liberate themselves. We were able to have a complete collapse of the state and its institutions, including the surveillance systems, including the prison systems, the school. I mean, it really is incredible how in the end we never received that solidarity, but we were able to, what I believe is one of the greatest revolutions in history. We fought alone, we dreamed alone. And so today I say we've liberated ourselves and we have a new stage. And so I just ask that people stand in solidarity. They don't immediately fall into the critique. Instead, maybe learning how to be supportive and finding ways to stand with us rather than against us. And that's going to be for the benefit of all Syrians of all different backgrounds.
Dr. Noor gave a nuanced perspective on the Syrian Revolution and reminded me just how awful the violence was in Syria during the past decade. The ex-dictator Bashar al-Assad killed somewhere between 500,000 to 1 million of his own people. Think about that for a second. He physically destroyed the country and displaced so many people that he essentially caused the largest refugee crisis since the Second World War. The amount of suffering that Syrians have endured is unbelievable. And now with the lifting of the Caesar sanctions being signed into law here in America, sanctions that were put in place to punish a dictator, by the way, who is no longer in power, the people of Syria can finally begin to rebuild what was destroyed. After years of destruction, Syria now stands at the threshold of a new era under a new leadership, one where a wounded nation can finally begin to rise, rebuild, and reclaim its future.